Hey, I'm Cordell, and today I'm going to show you how to put a fat 808 bass directly into your drum rack so that you can go from sounding like this to sounding like this. Let's do it. Alright, as you can see here, I've got this drum rack filled with a few drums that have some layered sounds in here. If you're not sure how to get these layered sounds or set up a drum rack, check out some of my other tutorials. But I want you to focus on these two right here, 808.1 and 808.2. So in 808.1, we have a group, one that has a kick from one of my sample packs and another one that has a hi-hat from one of my sample packs. And right now, there's no 808 going on. There's not really a lot of low end, so let's give it a listen. Yeah, so as you can see, it's pretty barren, although the kick sounds pretty decent. So what we're going to do is go over to instruments, and I'm going to use an operator. I'm just going to drag it directly into the group with the instrument rack. And now, let's just hear how it sounds with just the operator in. Pretty boring, so let's turn it into something fat. First thing we want to focus on is the note that the operator is making. So there's two ways to find this. The first way is to look into this chain section, open up the I.O., and as you can see here, 808.1 is playing note C3. So one option you have is you can actually drag this to any note that you want. That option is great if you only have your synth or your instrument on that track, but as you can see here, I've also got this hi-hat and this kick, so changing this note is going to mess up my sampler, and it's just kind of a headache. So what I'm going to do instead is leave that where it's at on the default. I'm going to hit Command F and then type in pitch. This is a MIDI effect, which means it needs to go in front of the instrument. And this will be able to adjust the pitch of just the operator. So I know in this particular track, I want it to be an F minor. And I know since the default is C, I'm actually going to put this down 7 semitones, which is going to make this an F. Now, I'm using operator here, but you can use any type of soft synth that you want to. You can drag it in here, whether it's third party or anything that's built into Ableton. I'm using operator because anyone that has Ableton has operator, so this will work for everybody. And it's also just a great synth. It's so fun to use. So now this is playing a note that is an F, but it's still a little high for me. So you can bring this down even further, or you can duplicate this and pitch it down by an octave, which can be really helpful. In my case, I really like to stay inside the synth, so I'm going to go over to the transpose knob, and I'm going to type in -24. So let's hear how it's sounding now. Nice. It's sounding pretty good. If you can't hear that, it's probably because you're on computer speakers or something that doesn't have a lot of low end, but trust me, there's some fatness going on because we're making an 808 sub, right? And 808s are largely just fat sine waves, right? That really fat low end, so we want to keep it nice and pure. Something you'll notice is that now the note is really short. It ends pretty quickly, so we're going to get another MIDI effect called note length. You're going to drag that on, and now this lets you control the length of the note, because since we're drumming, it's just going to be a super quick attack with our MIDI, but now we can adjust the length, so we can make it really long. As long as we want to. I want to add a little bit of spice to it, just so that, one, it's easier for people on computer speakers to hear, and two, just so that we've got a little bit more of a hit. So what I'm going to do is go over to oscillator B. I lifted the sustain up a little bit, and then I'm just bringing in the level. Now you can tell there's, a little bit more harmonics. I might bring the sustain down a little bit, actually. But yeah, this envelope will change this. And since we're in this mode right here, if you click on this, it shows you all of these different algorithms for mixing these synths together. This one just will frequency modulate everything into the next synthesizer. So right now what this means is that oscillator B is going into or frequency modulating oscillator A, and is a sine wave. So really just putting a sine wave into a sine wave. here is your tone. I'm going to turn that tone up a little bit more as well. Cool. So we've got a little bit of FM. We've got our envelope here that we can adjust as well. We've got this release. But also, since the note length is really long, the release is less important. Another tip for a great 808 is this pitch envelope over here. Turn that on. Make sure it's up at 100%. And what's really important is going to be this decay. So really long decay has that pitch effect, which is really common in 808s. You can make it really tight. That'll give it more of a transient and less of that bend. And if you want to adjust the pitch envelope or any of these envelopes all at once, you can actually use this time knob right here. I just turned it up a little bit as well. So now we've definitely got an 808, but as you'll notice, it's hitting the same note over and over and over again because we're just hitting the same pad. So there's a few clever ways that I like to get around this. One of them is another MIDI effect called random. I've gone over random in other videos before in depth, but right now all you need to worry about is this chance knob, is how often the trigger will lead to another note. And these choices are how many other notes the randomizer has to choose from. So now you can see it's just kind of moving all over the place. So to make sure that it stays controlled, we're going to add another MIDI effect. This one is called scale. And instead of hitting Command F, I like to go into the MIDI effects tab and go down to scale so that you can see all of these presets. They'll pick the scale that you want to use. So in my case, I know this is in F minor, so I'm just going to choose the minor preset, drag it over so that it's happening after all of these MIDI effects, and then change the bass to F. So now, no matter what happens within all of these other MIDI effects, the MIDI note will go into this scale MIDI effect, and it'll only spit out notes that are in F minor. Nice. I like to have my chants pretty low, and my choices pretty low as well. And I like to make sure that it's on add and not subtract, because this low F is pretty low. Anything much lower than this gets kind of difficult to hear, gets really weird and phasey. So I make sure it's on add. One scale is fine. Nice. And all of this is without processing. I'll go into processing in another tutorial, but this is just the raw patch with the MIDI effects, and it's starting to sound great. So what you'll notice here is I've got two 808 sections though, right? I've got this one and this empty one. So I like to use a second 808 as almost like a fill. So what I'll do is I will click this chain, which has everything we were just looking at. I'll hit Command C. I'll go back into this group, which just has the same thing, a kick and a hi-hat, and I'll actually paste that whole chain in here. But what I will do is bring this pitch up. So now it's going to start on a C instead of an F. It'll still stay in the key though, because I've got this bad boy right here. But you'll notice up here in the on the track, I've got a few notes that are going from 808.1 up to 808.2. So now we're going to use those as just a little bit more variation and variety. So let's hear how it sounds now. Nice. And there you go. One more tip, just to make sure it stays clean. You can side chain these 808s to your kick, or sometimes it's even simpler to just bring the attack back a little bit. Same with this one, so that the kick has some room to come in, the transient especially, before the 808 comes in. There you go. And now you can get crazy with processing and adding effects and things like that on your 808, but now you officially have some fat bass in your Ableton drum rack. Thanks so much for watching. If you liked that, don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you want to use some of these drum sounds or some of the other crazy bass noises that I've made, use the link in the description below to buy some of my sample packs. It really helps me out. Till next time, keep drumming.